In this Discovery Live tutorial, we'll take a look at the fundamentals of direct editing, changing your view, and some settings like how the mouse works. Let's go ahead and start with the sample heatsink. First, let's understand how to spin, pan, and zoom. All of these involve pressing down on your middle mouse button or your scroll wheel. Notice I'm using a mouse. A touchpad on a laptop will not be sufficient. Here, as I press down on the middle mouse button or the scroll wheel, the model is sent into spin mode. Notice there is a spin center, and that is based on the location of my cursor. If my cursor is over this face and I go into spin mode with the middle mouse button, that is the center of spin, etc. to wherever I have the mouse. If the mouse is off in white space but close to the model, it might put a spin center on the nearest point of the model. Get too far away from the model and it'll set the spin center as the middle of the model. If I hold down the control key and the middle mouse button and I move the entire mouse up or down, it'll zoom in and out. Notice it's zooming in and out of the left side of the screen. That's because that's where my cursor is. Notice I am not scrolling the mouse wheel up and down. That is not the default zooming. If I put my mouse over the center of the model, hold down Control and the middle mouse button and move my mouse down, it'll zoom in on that point. Instead of holding Control, if I hold Shift and the middle mouse button, that will allow me to pan the model up, down, left, right, etc. And from there, I can use the Control with the middle mouse to zoom back out. Before showing you where to change the mouse settings, I'd like to show you some viewing techniques. Down in the bottom left is a world origin widget. If I click on any of the arrows, it'll rotate the view to that direction. If I click on an arrow that's already pointing at the screen, it will rotate 180 degrees. If I click on this circle around it, it'll rotate 90 degrees. And I can drag that to have more control over how much it's rotating. There is a default view called the Home view found in the Design tab along with some other tabs across the top. The keyboard shortcut for this is H. So you can hit H for Home and it'll return to this original default ISO view. Z on your keyboard is also a default for zoom. If I were to select a face by clicking on it and press Z, it zooms in on that. If I click in white space so nothing is selected and I click Z, it zooms all. If I hold down the left mouse button and drag a box around a set of faces to select them and then hit Z, it zooms in on those faces. Hit Escape to clear my selection, Z again, and it zooms all. If there's a planar face I want to view head on, I can select that face and hit V on my keyboard for a plan view. Spin the model, select another face, V for plan view. Z to zoom in on that face. I'll return to a home view with the H key and show you where to change these settings. Under the File menu, you'll notice the Discovery options. In this menu, you'll find settings like Popular in terms of rendering quality and a few other interface options. You'll also notice a Units area. This is where you can change the units for the current document or all new documents, and you can use imperial or metric and different dimensions for length, angle, precision, etc. Navigation is where you'll find the mouse settings. You can change which buttons spin, pan, and zoom. MMB is middle mouse button, RMB is right mouse button, and you'll see different options in these dropdowns. You can invert the direction you zoom. If you prefer to zoom with the mouse wheel, you'll want to set that here to always. Notice it says hold Control to do something we call Query Select. If I exit out of this and I hover my mouse over this top face and I click, that face will become selected. If I scroll my mouse wheel up one, the face in the back is now highlighted, and if I click, that face will get selected. So if my goal was to select the hidden face in the back here, I put my mouse over it, I scroll up one and hold Control and click, it now becomes selected without having to spin the model. If we change zooming to be with the mouse wheel always, you will need to hold Control in order to do that query select where you find hidden geometry. One option that's useful to have on is called Rotate About Pre-Selected Object. If I go back out into 3D and I zoom out, normally when I spin, I'm able to spin in 3 degrees of freedom in 3 rotational axes. With that option on, if I hover over an edge and press on the middle mouse wheel to spin, that edge will be locked in place as I spin the model. I can spin along any of these straight edges, and it even works with curved edges in the model where it places a tangency line to rotate around there. Notice now that I can scroll my mouse wheel up and down to zoom, and I would hold the Control key to query select to those hidden faces. I'm going to return to a home view and change back that scroll setting to the default behavior. For the next part, I want to show some fundamentals of direct editing, and for this, I'm going to pause the simulation and hide the results. Now, in the Edit menu are Pull and Move, 2 of the main editing tools of Discovery Live. If I turn on Pull and I select a face, by clicking on it, I can now hold down the left mouse button to drag and pull on this face. Notice that when I do this, I'm given a dimension, and I could type in a value. I can also click on this face, and from this menu, you'll notice some common buttons. One is called the ruler. And with this, I can select something else on the model, like a face, an edge, or a point, anywhere here. Click to select that, type in a value, and that now becomes the dimension. If I click on this P, notice it says a group has been created. Over in this Groups panel, it has now saved that as a driving dimension or a parameter that I can easily edit later. You'll notice that as I pull on this face, all the other faces in the same plane are updating, and that is only because these are a pattern. So to show you more of the fundamentals of direct modeling, I'm going to right-click on this pattern and delete it. That only deletes the relationship, it does not delete the actual geometry. Now you'll notice that I can edit one without editing the others. With the pull tool, whenever I select a face and drag, it'll pull in its normal direction. I can select multiple faces by holding down the Control key, and you want to make sure you let go of the Control key when you drag. If you continue to hold down the Control key while pulling, it'll make copies. Those copies can then be pulled into solid bodies, but for this operation, we don't want to do that, so I'm going to use the Undo button in the upper left, or you can click Control-Z on your keyboard. Now, if I select faces in different directions, notice what happens when I pull. They all either add or remove geometry as they're offset in their relative normal direction. If I scroll to the hidden face and select that as well, and I'll do all 4 on these towers, notice that they all offset outward or inward, increasing or decreasing the size of the geometry that I'm editing. If at any time I want to cancel the operation I'm in because I don't want it to complete, if I do not let go of the button on my mouse, I can hit Escape and that will cancel that command. If I forget about that and I let go of my mouse and the operation is completed, that's when I'll need to use the Undo button. There's another tool similar to pull, and it's called move. And in some scenarios, move and pull look a lot alike. If I select a single planar face, I now need to pick a direction that I want to move it in. Once I've done that, I can now drag anywhere with my mouse and it will move or translate that face. I can cancel that with Escape as well. I could use the Control key to select multiple faces, pick a direction, and they move. However, the Move tool and the Pull tool work differently when I have a selection of faces selected. You'll remember here, if I switch back to Pull with P on my keyboard, I can drag and offset all of these faces together. If I switch back to Move with the M on my keyboard, here I'm picking a single direction and I'm translating these faces as a group, either in that green direction, in the red direction, etc. The Move tool also has some rotational axes. So if I grab one of these curved arrows, I can drag with my mouse to rotate it. And of course, there is an angle there or a number I could type in. If I hit escape and I just click on this arrow and type 45 and hit enter, it'll rotate to that value. I can undo this command, and right now the Move tool is at the center of the selected geometry. Notice I could pick a different arrow and rotate it in a different direction. Now this may not be where I want to rotate around. So if I drag the ball of the Move tool down or up to another location, I can now rotate about that as a center. So wherever the location of the Move handle is, that is the center of rotation. Notice on the top, the two faces are not rotating. They're remaining parallel to the bottom. That's simply because they are not selected. There is not a constraint to set up which would keep these perpendicular. Constraints in Discovery Live are selection-based. So if I hold Control and add those faces into my selection, notice that they now rotate with the rest of the faces. So constraints, the way things are edited, are all selection-based in Discovery Live. Please check out part 2 for more of direct editing with Discovery Live.